You make 35,000 decisions every single day, yet 95% of them come from your unconscious mind, the part that already believes you deserve everything you desire. Think about that. While you consciously worry about being good enough, your unconscious is already operating from victory. It's why a child learns to walk, not because they think they can, but because deep down, they know they already are walkers. You're not broken and trying to become whole. You're whole and convincing yourself you're broken. Every anxiety attack, every moment of self-doubt, that's not weakness. That's your truth, trying to break through the lies. Every person who seems to have it all together is simply better at one thing than you. They've stopped arguing with their own victory. They act like they've won because some part of them, the deepest, truest part, never forgot they were born winning. You didn't come here to prove yourself. You came here to express what you already are. But somewhere along the way, someone convinced you that you're a beggar at the feast of your own life. Today, we reclaim your throne. Not through force, but through remembering who you were before the world told you who to be. Before we start, if you genuinely enjoy these videos, consider subscribing to our channel and comment what city and time you're watching from. I'm really curious where everyone is tuning in from. Let me share with you what you're about to discover in the next hour. You're going to learn why your unconscious mind has been sabotaging your conscious efforts. And here's the surprising part. It's actually trying to protect your true victory. You see, there's a profound difference between ego-driven success and soul-aligned victory. And your unconscious knows the difference even when your conscious mind doesn't. We're going to explore how childhood patterns create adult prisons, but more importantly, I'm going to show you that the key has been out of your pocket all along. When I tell you to act as if you've already won, I'm not asking you to pretend. I'm asking you to remember. I know you're tired of that exhausting feeling of never being enough, no matter what you achieve. You get the promotion, you reach the goal, you hit the milestone, and somehow it still feels empty. There's this constant anxiety that someone will discover you're a fraud, that you don't really deserve what you have. You're caught in this loop of achievement addiction, always needing the next win to feel worthy. And underneath it all is this haunting sense that you're meant for something more, but you can't quite name what it is. Others will tell you to think positive, to manifest harder, to hustle more. But I've spent decades in the depths of the human psyche, and I'll tell you something different. Your problem isn't that you're not doing enough. Your problem is that you're doing too much to avoid being who you already are. The unconscious doesn't lie. It only speaks in symbols, dreams, and symptoms. And right now, every symptom in your life is trying to tell you the same thing. Stop performing your life and start living it. Where you are now is in the waiting room of your own life, always preparing, never arriving. But where we're going is somewhere entirely different. You're going to walk through life like you own the building, because you do. Let me tell you about a patient who changed everything about how I understand victory. He was a wealthy businessman, successful by every external measure, but he couldn't enjoy any of it. Every night, he would have the same dream. In the dream, he was a child again, standing in his father's workshop, watching his father's hands create beautiful furniture from raw wood. He would wake up with tears on his face, not understanding why. We worked together for months, and slowly the truth emerged. He had won, yes, but he had won his father's game, not his own. His father had always said that real men wore suits and worked in offices, that working with your hands was for people who couldn't do better. So my patient had spent 30 years proving he could do better, climbing corporate ladders, acquiring companies, sitting in boardrooms. But his unconscious kept showing him where his real victory waited, not in those boardrooms, but in creating with his hands, in the workshop he had abandoned to please a ghost. The day he understood this, everything changed. He didn't quit his job immediately. He started small. He bought some tools, set up a workspace in his garage. And you know what happened? For the first time in 30 years, he felt alive. Not because he was achieving something new, but because he was finally honoring what had always been true. Within a year, he had restructured his entire life. He still ran his business, but now he also taught woodworking to underprivileged kids. He had stopped living his father's victory and started living his own. Here's another story that will show you how the unconscious reveals our true victories. A woman came to see me because she was destroying her marriage. She loved her husband deeply, but she kept calling him by her father's name. Not occasionally, constantly. It was ruining their intimacy, creating terrible fights. She was desperate to stop, but couldn't. Now, most people would say this was just a mental slip, a silly mistake. But in psychoanalysis, we know there are no accidents. Every slip of the tongue is the unconscious trying to tell us something. So we explored, and what we found was remarkable. As a child, she had watched her mother compete with her for her father's attention. Her mother would dress up when father came home, would laugh louder at his jokes, would push the daughter aside to sit next to him. The daughter learned that love was a competition, and she was always losing. Fast forward 30 years, and she was still competing. Every time she called her husband by her father's name, she was revealing the truth. She wasn't relating to her husband at all. She was still trying to win a competition from childhood, still trying to beat her mother for her father's love. Once she saw this pattern, really saw it, she could finally stop competing and start connecting. Victory for her wasn't about beating her past. It was about leaving the ring entirely. She didn't need to win her father's love anymore, because she already had her husband's love. She just had to stop fighting ghosts long enough to receive it. But perhaps the most powerful story I can share with you is about a young artist who came to me because he couldn't succeed. He had brilliant talent. Everyone who saw his work said so. Gallery owners wanted to represent him. Collectors wanted to buy his pieces, but every time he got close to a breakthrough, he would sabotage himself. He would miss important meetings, destroy finished pieces, pick fights with supporters. He was desperate to understand why he kept destroying his own dreams. As we worked together, a pattern emerged. His mother had been an artist too, but she had sacrificed her career to raise him and his siblings. She never said she resented it, but he could feel it in every sigh, every wistful look at her abandoned easel, every story about what could have been. In his child's mind, he had made an unconscious contract. If mother couldn't succeed as an artist, neither would he. His success would be a betrayal of her sacrifice. This is what we call unconscious loyalty, and it's more powerful than any conscious desire. Every time he got close to success, his unconscious would pull him back, keeping him loyal to his mother's struggle. But here's what changed everything. We discovered that he could honor his mother's struggle and still claim his own victory. They weren't mutually exclusive. In fact, his success could be a completion of her dream, not a betrayal of it. The moment he gave himself permission to win, his art exploded into the world. But it wasn't just his art that changed. He started including his mother in his success. He dedicated exhibitions to her, he asked her advice, he even collaborated with her on pieces. She began painting again, inspired by her son's courage. You see, he thought victory meant leaving her behind, but really it meant bringing her with him. His unconscious had been protecting a love, not a limitation. But here's what nobody tells you about the unconscious mind's relationship with victory, and this is where everything gets really interesting. Your psyche, the totality of who you are, is structured in 3 parts, and understanding this structure is the key to understanding why you struggle with victory. First, there's the id. This is your primal knowing, your pure life force. The id doesn't understand the word undeserving. It doesn't know how to doubt itself. When you were a baby, you cried when you were hungry because you knew, without question, that you deserved to be fed. The id always knows you've won. It's pure deservingness, pure appetite for life, pure belief in your right to exist fully. Then there's the ego. This is the part that develops as you interact with the world. The ego learns that you can't always have what you want immediately, that other people have needs too, that you have to navigate social reality. But here's where things go wrong. The ego starts creating stories about who you are based on how others respond to you. If your parents were too busy, your ego decides you're not important. If you were criticized, your ego decides you're not good enough. The ego creates the illusion of not yet, not successful yet, not worthy yet, not ready yet. It's always comparing you to others, always finding you lacking. And then there's the superego. This is the internalized voice of authority, usually your parents, but also teachers, religious figures, society itself. The superego is the voice that says you should, you must, you can't. It enforces old rules about who deserves what, rules that were often created by people who were themselves afraid, limited, wounded. The superego is why you feel guilty when you succeed, why you feel like you're betraying someone when you're happy, why you punish yourself for wanting more. Now here's the integration that changes everything. You need to let the id lead. Let that primal knowing of your worthiness be your North Star. Let the ego serve. Use it to navigate the practical world, but don't let it define your worth. And the superego? Let it advise, but not rule. Listen to its concerns, but don't let it have the final vote. When these three parts are in their proper relationship, you naturally act like you've already won, because the deepest part of you never forgot that you have. Let me tell you about the repetition compulsion of losing, because this is probably the most important thing you'll hear today. We recreate familiar pain because it feels safer than unfamiliar joy. I know that sounds crazy, but think about it. You know how to be disappointed. You know how to struggle. You know how to feel not good enough. These are familiar territories. You have strategies for dealing with them. But joy, success, being truly seen and valued, these are unknown territories, and the unconscious is terrified of the unknown. Every time you sabotage your success, you're not being weak or stupid. You're being loyal to an old story. Maybe it's the story that your family tells about itself. We're not those kind of people. We don't get breaks. We have to work twice as hard for half as much. Maybe it's a story you created to make sense of early pain. If I stay small, I won't be a target. If I don't try, I can't fail. If I don't want anything, I can't be disappointed. The unconscious would rather be right about your limitations than happy in your expansion. This is why you'll unconsciously create situations that confirm what you already believe about yourself. If you believe you're unlucky, you'll unconsciously make choices that create bad luck. If you believe love always leaves, you'll unconsciously pick partners who will leave or push away partners who would stay. You're not crazy, you're consistent. Your unconscious is always trying to create a reality that matches your deepest beliefs. Breaking free from this pattern requires 3 steps. First, recognize the pattern. Notice how you recreate the same situations, the same dynamics, the same disappointments. Second, honor the protection this pattern provided. It kept you safe once. It helped you make sense of a world that felt overwhelming. Thank it for its service. And third, choose different, not dramatically different. The unconscious doesn't trust dramatic change, just slightly different. If you always leave first, stay 5 minutes longer. If you always say no to opportunities, say, "Let me think about it," instead. Small changes create new neural pathways, and new neural pathways create new realities. Now, let's talk about the transference of power, because this is happening every single day of your life, and you probably don't even know it. Transference is when you unconsciously redirect feelings about one person onto another person. But it's more than that. You literally project your own power, your own authority, onto others, and then spend your life trying to earn it back. Think about who you're trying to impress. Your boss? They're probably a stand-in for a parent whose approval you could never quite secure. That successful friend? They're holding the projection of the person you're not allowing yourself to be. The critical voice in your head? That's not your voice. That's someone from your past who you've internalized and given your power to. Every person you're trying to impress, every authority you're trying to please, every standard you're trying to meet, these are all projections. You're not seeking their approval. You're seeking your own approval. But you've projected your authority onto them, so now it looks like it's coming from outside. This is why external validation never satisfies. You could get 1,000 compliments, but if you haven't taken back your projection, if you haven't reclaimed your authority, those compliments just bounce off. They can't land because the person whose approval you really need is you, but you've given yourself away. The shift happens when you take back your projections, when you realize that the power you see in others is actually your power reflected back to you, when you stop trying to earn from others what you already possess yourself. This isn't arrogance, it's accuracy. You're not saying you're better than others. You're saying you're no longer going to pretend you're less than yourself. Let me explain the defense mechanisms against victory, because once you see these, you can't unsee them. Your psyche has developed elaborate ways to protect you from the responsibility of your own magnificence. That sounds strange, doesn't it? Why would you need protection from magnificence? Because with great power comes great responsibility, and some part of you learned early that it's safer to be powerless. Rationalization is when you tell yourself, I don't really want it anyway. You didn't get the promotion? Well, you didn't really want the extra responsibility. The relationship ended? Well, they weren't really right for you. You do this to protect yourself from feeling the disappointment, but what you're really doing is protecting yourself from wanting fully, from claiming your desires, from saying yes, I want this and I deserve to have it. Denial is when you say, I'm not ready yet. There's always one more course to take, one more skill to develop, one more thing to fix about yourself before you can step into your victory. But readiness is a myth. Nobody is ever ready. The people who succeed aren't more ready than you. They've just stopped using readiness as an excuse. Your unconscious creates this not ready story to protect you from the risk of being seen, of being visible, of being responsible for your gifts. Projection is when you say, they don't deserve it either. You see someone successful and immediately look for their flaws. They're not that talented. They just got lucky. They must have connections. They probably sacrificed their integrity. You do this because if they deserve their success, then your lack of success must mean something about you. So you tear them down to avoid looking at your own resistance to rising up. Displacement is when you say, I'll be happy when. When I lose weight, when I get the job, when I find the partner, when I have more money. You displace your victory onto future conditions to avoid claiming it now. But here's the truth. Those conditions are not requirements for victory. They're results of it. You don't get happy when you succeed. You succeed when you decide you're already worthy of happiness. These defenses aren't character flaws. They're protective mechanisms. They protected you once from something that felt too big, too much, too dangerous. Maybe it was the jealousy of a sibling when you shone too bright. Maybe it was the overwhelm of a parent who couldn't handle your bigness. Maybe it was the message from culture that people like you don't get to win. Whatever it was, you developed these defenses to stay safe. But what protected you then is now imprisoning you. It's time to lower the drawbridge and let your victory in. Now let's talk about the return of the repressed victor. What you suppress doesn't disappear. It grows in the dark. Every part of you that you've pushed down, every dream you've denied, every desire you've disowned, it's all still there, getting stronger, looking for ways to break through. And it does break through, just not in ways you recognize. Your repressed victory shows up as inexplicable anger. You find yourself furious at small things, irritated by other people's happiness, resentful of their success. That's not pettiness, that's your power wanting out. That anger is life force that's been turned against itself. It's your victory pounding on the door of your consciousness, demanding to be let in. It shows up as depression. But depression isn't the absence of feeling, it's the suppression of feeling. It's your joy, buried alive. Every depressed person I've worked with is sitting on a volcano of life force that they're using all their energy to keep down. They're not empty. They're so full they're afraid they'll explode if they let themselves feel it all. Depression is what happens when you've been acting like you've lost for so long that you've forgotten you've won. It shows up as anxiety. But anxiety isn't fear. It's excitement that's been mislabeled. Your body doesn't know the difference between fear and excitement. They're the same physiological response. Racing heart, sweaty palms, butterflies in stomach. That could be terror, or it could be anticipation. Your repressed victory creates anxiety because some part of you knows that something big is trying to happen, but you've labeled it as dangerous instead of exciting. It shows up as physical symptoms, chronic pain, digestive issues, headaches, insomnia. These are often your truth demanding attention. Your body is loyal to your authenticity, even when your mind isn't. It will create symptoms to slow you down when you're running from yourself, to make you pay attention when you're ignoring your truth, to force you to rest when you're avoiding your victory through constant busyness. Liberation comes when you let the victor in you speak, act, and live. When you stop treating your power as a problem and start treating it as a gift. When you realize that your symptoms aren't trying to hurt you, they're trying to heal you by forcing you to face what you've been avoiding. Now, let's go even deeper into the practical alchemy of living as if you've already won. Everything I've told you means nothing if you don't have ways to embody it, to live it, to make it real in your daily experience. The first practice is the morning declaration. Before your ego wakes up fully, while you're still in that drowsy space between sleep and waking, this is when you speak to your unconscious. Don't reach for your phone. Don't start thinking about your day. Stay in that liminal space and say, I am already everything I need to be today. Don't say it to convince yourself. Say it to remember. Your unconscious is most receptive in these threshold moments. It believes what you tell it when the critical mind is still soft, still permeable. Some mornings you won't believe it. Say it anyway. Some mornings it will feel like a lie. Say it anyway. You're not trying to create truth. You're trying to remember truth. Every morning you have a choice. You can wake up and immediately start looking for evidence that you're not enough, or you can wake up and remind yourself that you've already won. The day will unfold differently based on which story you choose to tell yourself in those first moments. The second practice is the victory walk. Once a day, I want you to walk somewhere as if you own everything you see. Not arrogantly, not aggressively, but generously, like a benevolent ruler walking through their kingdom. Let your shoulders drop. Let your chest open. Let your stride lengthen. Look at people not with need but with blessing. Look at buildings not with envy but with appreciation. Look at the world as if it's all yours, because in a very real sense, it is. Notice how your body changes when you walk this way. Notice how others respond to you. Some will smile without knowing why. Some will step aside with unusual respect. Some will be drawn to you without understanding the pull. This isn't pretending, this is practicing your natural state. You were born with sovereignty. You've just forgotten how to embody it. The third practice is the evening review. Before sleep, when you're lying in bed, ask your unconscious, where did I deny my victory today? Don't judge the answer. Don't create a story about it. Just notice. Maybe you downplayed a compliment. Maybe you apologized for taking up space. Maybe you talked yourself out of an opportunity. Just notice without judgment. Then ask, how can I honor my victory tomorrow? And here's the key. Don't try to answer this question with your conscious mind. Let it go into your dreams. Let your unconscious work on it while you sleep. You'll be amazed at what you wake up knowing. The unconscious is always working on your problems, but it can only solve the problems you give it. Give it the problem of your victory, and it will show you the way. The fourth practice is slip analysis. Start paying attention to your mistakes, the wrong words you say, the names you forget, the things you lose. These aren't errors, they're messages. Your unconscious is always trying to tell you where your real victory lives, and it uses these slips to get your attention. You keep losing your work badge, maybe you're meant to leave that job. You keep forgetting your anniversary, maybe you're not as committed to that relationship as you think. You keep calling your new boss by your old boss's name, maybe you haven't really left that old dynamic behind. Every slip is a breadcrumb leading you toward your truth. Don't dismiss these moments. Write them down. Look for patterns. Your unconscious is more intelligent than your conscious mind. It sees patterns you can't see, knows truths you're not ready to know, understands connections your logical mind can't make. Trust its intelligence. Follow its lead. The fifth practice is symptom translation. Every complaint you have is an inverted wish. This is profound when you really understand it. Your unconscious doesn't know how to lie, but it does know how to speak in code. When you complain, you're actually telling yourself what you want, just backwards. When you say, I'm so tired, you're really saying, I'm ready for something new. When you say, nobody understands me, you're really saying, I'm ready to understand. When you say nothing ever works out, you're really saying, I'm ready for things to work differently. When you say, I don't have enough time, you're ever difference of ready, really saying, I'm not prioritizing what matters to me. Start translating your complaints into their victory language. Instead of, I hate my job, try, I'm ready for work that feeds my soul. Instead of, I'm always broke, try, I'm ready to receive abundance. Instead of, nobody appreciates me, try, I'm ready to appreciate myself. This isn't positive thinking, this is accurate translation. You're learning to hear what your unconscious is really saying underneath the complaint. These practices aren't complicated, and that's intentional. The unconscious doesn't respond to complexity. It responds to consistency. Do these simple things every day and watch how your reality begins to shift. Not because you're making it shift, but because you're finally aligning with what has always been true. After all these years of studying the human psyche, I can tell you the ultimate secret. You're not broken and trying to become whole. You're whole and have been convinced you're broken. Every neurosis, every anxiety, every moment of self-doubt, these aren't signs of your failure. They're signs of your truth trying to break through. You came here already won. Not metaphorically, literally. You won the cosmic lottery of existence. You beat 1,000,000 to 1 odds just to be born. Millions of potential beings didn't make it, but you did. And that same force that brought you here, that insisted on your existence against impossible odds, it's still in you, still fighting for you, still knowing your victory even when your conscious mind forgets. The question was never, how do I win? The question has always been, how do I remember I've already won? Because you see, victory isn't something you achieve, it's something you accept. It's not something you earn, it's something you embody. It's not something you become, it's something you've always been. Every person who has ever made you feel less than, every voice that told you you're not enough, every experience that made you doubt your worth, they were all lying. Maybe they didn't know they were lying. Maybe they were just repeating lies they had been told. But lies they were nonetheless. The truth is simpler and more magnificent. You are already everything you need to be. This doesn't mean you don't grow, don't learn, don't evolve. It means you grow from wholeness, not toward it. You learn from curiosity, not from deficiency. You evolve because life is creative, not because you're broken. There's such freedom in this shift. When you're not trying to fix yourself, all that energy becomes available for creating, for loving, for living. Think about a tree. It doesn't struggle to be a tree. It doesn't compare itself to other trees. It doesn't wonder if it deserves sunlight. It simply expresses its treeness fully, completely, without apology. It acts like it's already won the right to exist, because it has. You are no different. You have the same right to take up space, to reach for light, to grow in your own unique way. But we've complicated it. We've added layers of story, of conditioning, of false belief. We've created elaborate mazes between ourselves and our victory, and then we wonder why we feel lost. The path back isn't through more complexity, it's through simplicity. It's through remembering what you knew before you learned to doubt it. Repeat this, not to convince yourself, but to remind yourself. My unconscious knows my victory. My dreams reveal my path. My symptoms are my teachers. I am not becoming, I am remembering. I act like I've already won because, in the deepest sense, I have. The game was rigged in my favor from the start. This is not arrogance. Arrogance is when the ego tries to prove it's special. This is accuracy, when the whole self remembers it's already complete. Arrogance pushes others down to feel taller. Victory lifts others up because there's plenty of room at the top. Arrogance needs constant validation. Victory is self-validating. When you truly understand that you've already won, you stop competing and start contributing. You stop grasping and start giving. You stop performing and start being. You stop trying to prove your worth and start expressing it. This is what the world needs from you. Not your struggle, but your victory. Not your small self, but your full self. The resistance you feel to this message, that's your superego trying to keep you safe in the familiar prison of unworthiness. The excitement you feel, that's your id recognizing truth, ready to leap into full expression. The confusion you feel, that's your ego trying to figure out how to navigate this new reality. All of these responses are perfect. They show that something is shifting, that the tectonic plates of your psyche are moving. Change doesn't happen in the mind, it happens in the body. So notice what you're feeling right now. Notice where you feel expansion, where you feel contraction. Notice where you feel possibility, where you feel resistance. Your body is giving you a map. Follow the expansion. Trust the possibility. The resistance will take care of itself when you stop feeding it with your attention. You might be wondering, but what about all my past failures? What about all the times I've tried and failed? Here's what you need to understand. You've never actually failed. You've gathered information. You've learned what doesn't work. You've discovered what isn't aligned with your truth. Every failure was your unconscious, protecting you from a victory that wasn't really yours, steering you away from success that would have been a prison. The job you didn't get, you would have been miserable there. The relationship that ended, they couldn't have received your full self. The opportunity that fell through, it would have taken you further from your truth, not closer to it. Your unconscious is brilliant. It sabotages what isn't right to preserve energy for what is. Trust its wisdom, even when you don't understand its methods. This is the paradox. When you stop needing to win, you realize you've already won. When you stop trying to prove yourself, you realize there's nothing to prove. When you stop seeking approval, you realize you've always had the only approval that matters. Your own, but not your ego's approval, which is conditional and never satisfied. Your deep self's approval, which you've had since the moment you were conceived. From this place of already won, you can play the game of life differently. You can take risks because failure isn't real, it's just information. You can be generous because there's no scarcity. Abundance is your natural state. You can be authentic because there's nothing to hide. Your truth is your power. You can love fully because rejection can't diminish you. You're already complete. Let me go deeper into something critical that most people never understand about victory and the unconscious mind. You see, there are layers to this work that we haven't even touched yet. The unconscious operates on multiple levels simultaneously, and each level has its own relationship with your victory. The personal unconscious, that's where your individual experiences live. Your forgotten memories, your repressed desires. But beneath that is what my colleague Jung called the collective unconscious. Though I see it somewhat differently. It's the inherited wisdom of all humanity, the knowledge that you were born victorious encoded in your very cells. Every one of your ancestors survived long enough to reproduce. Think about that. You are the product of an unbroken chain of winners stretching back to the beginning of life itself. Victory isn't just your birthright, it's your biological inheritance. But we've been taught to mistrust this inheritance. We've been told that our instincts are base, that our desires are selfish, that our natural impulses need to be controlled and suppressed. This is the great lie of civilization. Yes, we need structure, we need society, but not at the cost of forgetting our fundamental victorious nature. The baby who cries for milk doesn't doubt its right to nourishment. The child who reaches for what it wants doesn't question its worthiness. It's only later, through what we call education, but might better be called domestication, that we learn to doubt our right to take up space, to have needs, to want more. Let me tell you about another patient, because this story will show you something profound about how victory actually works in the unconscious. She was a teacher, brilliant with children, but she couldn't ask for a raise. For 10 years, she'd been paid less than her colleagues, and she knew it. Every year, she would promise herself she would speak up, and every year she would find an excuse not to. The principal was having a hard time, the budget was tight, other teachers needed it more. We explored her history, and we found something fascinating. When she was 7 years old, she had won a spelling bee. She was so proud, so excited. She ran home to tell her mother, who was on the phone with a friend, complaining about money, about how hard life was, about how unfair everything was. The little girl stood there with her trophy, wanting to share her victory, but seeing her mother's struggle, she hid the trophy behind her back. She never mentioned the spelling bee. She put the trophy in a box under her bed. That moment created a template in her unconscious. My victory causes other people pain. My success highlights other unconscious people's failure. If I win, someone else loses. So for 30 years, she had been hiding her victories, minimizing her achievements, making herself smaller so others wouldn't feel bad. But here's what she didn't understand. Her playing small didn't make anyone else bigger. Her accepting less didn't give anyone else more. She was operating from a child's magical thinking, believing that success was a zero-sum game. When she finally asked for that raise, you know what happened? She got it. Immediately, without question. Her principal had been wondering for years why she never advocated for herself. He had actually set aside money in the budget specifically for her, waiting for her to ask. Her victory had been sitting there waiting for her for years, but she couldn't claim it because a 7-year-old girl was still hiding her trophy behind her back. This is how the unconscious works. It takes a moment, usually from childhood, and builds an entire worldview around it. That worldview becomes a lens through which you see everything, but you don't know you're looking through a lens. You think that's just how the world is. People are struggling, success is dangerous, wanting is selfish, victory is for other people. But these aren't facts. They're interpretations made by a child's mind trying to make sense of complex adult emotions. Now let's talk about something even deeper, the relationship between sex and victory. I know that might sound strange, but stay with me. In psychoanalysis, we understand that the life force, what I call libido, is the energy behind all creative expression, all achievement, all victory. It's not just about sexual desire, it's about the desire to create, to expand, to merge with life itself. When you suppress your victory, you're suppressing your life force. When you deny your right to win, you're denying your creative power. This is why so many people who are stuck professionally are also stuck romantically. Why so many people who can't claim their career victories also can't claim pleasure in their personal lives. It's the same energy, the same force, the same fundamental right to experience life fully. The same voice that says you don't deserve success is the voice that says you don't deserve love. You don't deserve pleasure. You don't deserve to feel fully alive. But your body knows better. Your body is always trying to return you to victory, to aliveness, to full expression. That's why suppressed victory often shows up as sexual dysfunction or compulsion. The energy has to go somewhere. If you won't let it flow into creative expression and worldly success, it will find other outlets, often problematic ones. Addiction, compulsion, obsession. These are often misdirected victory energy, life force that's been blocked from its natural channels. Here's another profound truth about victory and the unconscious. You're not afraid of failure, you're afraid of success. Failure is familiar. Failure confirms what you already believe about yourself. Failure keeps you safe in the known world. But success? Success requires you to change your entire identity. Success requires you to leave behind the story of struggle that's become so comfortable. Success requires you to disappoint the people who bond with you over shared limitation. Think about it. If you really claimed your victory, who would you lose? The friend who only calls to complain? The family member who needs you to stay small so they can feel big? The partner who's comfortable with your insecurity because it makes them feel needed? Your unconscious knows that victory comes with loss. The loss of the familiar, the loss of certain relationships, the loss of your excuse for not living fully. And so it protects you from that loss by keeping you from your victory. But here's what your unconscious doesn't realize. Those aren't real relationships anyway. Any relationship that requires you to be less than you are isn't love, it's a trauma bond. Any connection that's threatened by your success isn't friendship, it's mutual imprisonment. Any family dynamic that needs you to fail isn't family, it's a dysfunction that's been labeled as love. Real love celebrates your victory. Real friendship is energized by your success. Real family wants you to surpass them, to go further, to break the generational patterns that have kept everyone small. But to find these real relationships, you have to be willing to lose the false ones. And that's terrifying. That's why the unconscious resists victory, not because it doesn't want you to win, but because it's trying to protect you from the loss that comes with winning. Let me tell you about one more patient because this story encompasses everything we've been discussing. He was a writer, incredibly talented, but he could never finish anything. He had dozens of half-written novels, hundreds of started stories, thousands of brilliant beginnings. But something would always happen around the middle. He would lose interest, find a fatal flaw, get a better idea. For 20 years, he had been starting and stopping, creating and destroying. As we worked together, we discovered something remarkable. His father had been a writer too, a novelist who had published one book to great acclaim and then never wrote another. The father had spent the rest of his life talking about the book he was going to write, the masterpiece that was coming, the story that would change everything. He died with that book unwritten. My patient had unconsciously decided that finishing meant dying. In his child's mind, his father had finished one book and then creatively died. So to stay creatively alive, he could never finish anything. He had to keep everything in potential, in process, in the state of becoming, because completion meant death. But we discovered something else. His father hadn't stopped writing because he finished a book. He had stopped writing because he couldn't handle the victory of that book. The success had triggered such profound unconscious fears. Fear of exposure, fear of judgment, fear of having to do it again, that he shut down entirely. He spent the rest of his life in the safety of potential, never risking the vulnerability of completion. My patient was repeating his father's pattern, but with a twist. Instead of publishing one book and stopping, he was stopping before he could even publish one. He was protecting himself from his father's fate by never even approaching it. But in trying to avoid his father's creative death, he was creating his own creative purgatory. The breakthrough came when he realized that he could complete things without dying, that he could succeed without shutting down, that he could surpass his father without betraying him. He started finishing stories, small ones at first, then longer pieces. Each completion was a small death and a small rebirth. He was learning that endings weren't deaths, they were transitions. Within a year, he had not only finished a novel but published it. And you know what? He didn't die. He didn't shut down. He kept writing. He had broken the family curse, not through force but through understanding. He had freed not just himself but his father's ghost. His victory became a healing for his entire lineage. This is the deep work of claiming your victory. It's not just about you. It's about breaking patterns that have been passed down through generations. It's about healing wounds that were inflicted before you were born. It's about claiming not just your personal victory, but your ancestral victory. The victory that your parents and grandparents and great-grandparents couldn't claim for themselves. Every time you choose victory over familiar defeat, you're not just changing your life, you're changing your lineage. Every time you break through an unconscious barrier, you're not just freeing yourself, you're freeing the parts of your parents that live in you, the parts of your ancestors that are encoded in your DNA. This is why it feels so big, so overwhelming, so impossibly important. Because it is. You're not just claiming your victory, you're claiming victory for everyone who came before you and couldn't. But let's get even more practical now, because understanding without application is just intellectual entertainment. I want to give you more tools, more specific ways to work with your unconscious to claim your victory. First, let's talk about dream work. Your dreams are not random neural firings. They're messages from your unconscious about your victory. Every dream is showing you something about where you're blocked, where you're ready to break through, where your victory is waiting. But you have to learn to read them. Keep a notebook by your bed. The moment you wake up, before your conscious mind fully engages, write down whatever you remember from your dreams. Don't interpret, don't analyze, just record. Do this for a month. Then look back and notice the patterns. What images keep appearing? What emotions keep recurring? What situations keep replaying? These patterns are your unconscious showing you your victory map. The door you can never open in your dreams, that's a victory you're not letting yourself claim. The person you're always running from, that's a part of yourself you're not integrating. The treasure you can never quite reach, that's your success that you keep just out of grasp. Your dreams are showing you exactly where your victory is and exactly what's blocking it. Here's another practice, the body scan for victory. Your body holds the memory of every time you've won and every time you've convinced yourself you've lost. Lie down, close your eyes, and slowly scan your body from head to toe. Where do you feel expansion? That's where your victory lives. Where do you feel contraction? That's where your defeat story is stored. Put your hand on the contracted areas and breathe into them. Don't try to change them, just acknowledge them. Say, I see you. I feel you. Thank you for holding this for me. I'm ready to let it go now. Your body has been loyally holding your defeat stories, waiting for you to be ready to release them. When you acknowledge this, holding with gratitude instead of judgment, your body can finally let go. Now, let's talk about the victory inventory. Make a list of every victory you've ever had, no matter how small. Learning to tie your shoes, riding a bike, passing a test, making a friend, getting a job, surviving a loss. Every single victory counts. Fill pages with your victories. Your unconscious needs to be reminded of your winning pattern. But here's the deeper practice. Next to each victory, write what you told yourself about it. Did you minimize it? Anyone could have done that. Did you attribute it to luck? I just got lucky. Did you give the credit away? I couldn't have done it without help. Notice how you've been denying your victories even while experiencing them. This is your unconscious pattern of victory rejection, and seeing it clearly is the first step to changing it. Another powerful practice is what I call victory rehearsal. Every night before sleep, imagine tomorrow as if you've already won. Not winning, won. See yourself moving through your day from a place of complete victory. How do you walk? How do you speak? How do you respond to challenges? You're not imagining becoming victorious, you're imagining remembering you're victorious. Your unconscious doesn't distinguish between vividly imagined experience and real experience. When you repeatedly imagine yourself as already victorious, your unconscious starts to believe it, starts to organize reality around it, starts to make choices from that place. You're literally reprogramming your unconscious expectations, and your unconscious creates your reality based on its expectations. Let's also talk about the language of victory. The words you use create your reality. Every time you say, I can't, you're programming your unconscious for defeat. Every time you say, I'm trying, you're programming your unconscious for struggle. Every time you say, maybe someday, you're programming your unconscious for perpetual postponement. Start speaking the language of victory. Instead of, I can't, say, I'm learning how. Instead of, I'm trying, say, I'm doing. Instead of maybe someday, say, I'm preparing for. These aren't just word games, they're unconscious programming. Your unconscious takes your words literally. It doesn't understand that you're being modest or realistic or careful. It just hears can't and creates can't. It hears trying and creates endless trying. It hears someday and keeps victory always one day away. But the most powerful practice of all is what I call victory witnessing. Find someone who can see your victory even when you can't. Not someone who will flatter you or enable your delusions, but someone who can see through your defeat story to the victory underneath. This might be a therapist, a mentor, a true friend, someone who refuses to collude with your limitations. When someone witnesses your victory consistently, something shifts in your unconscious. You start to see yourself through their eyes. You start to believe in the victory they see. This is the positive transference that heals. When you project your victory onto someone who can hold it until you're ready to claim it for yourself. Now, let me tell you something about resistance, because you're probably feeling it right now. Part of you is arguing with everything I'm saying. Part of you is finding reasons why this doesn't apply to you, why your situation is different, why you really can't claim victory. That resistance, that's not your enemy. That's your unconscious protection, and it deserves respect. Your resistance has kept you safe. It's protected you from disappointment, from exposure, from the vulnerability of hoping. Thank your resistance for its service, but then let it know that you're ready for a different kind of protection now. The protection of your power, the protection of your truth, the protection of your victory. The unconscious doesn't release old patterns through force. It releases them through understanding and appreciation. When you fight your resistance, it gets stronger. When you appreciate it, understand its purpose, and offer it a better job, it transforms. Your resistance can become your discernment. Your fear can become your wisdom. Your protection can become your power. Let me share something personal with you. People think that because I understand these patterns, because I've mapped the unconscious, that I'm somehow beyond them. But I struggle with my own victory every day. I see my own patterns, my own resistances, my own elaborate ways of avoiding my full power. The difference is that now I recognize them as patterns, not as truth. When I notice myself sabotaging my success, I don't judge myself. I get curious. What is my unconscious protecting me from? What old story is being activated? What generational pattern is asking to be healed? This curiosity, this compassionate investigation, this is the real work. Not forcing yourself to be victorious, but understanding why you're not allowing yourself to be. Every person you meet is struggling with their own version of this same issue. The CEO who can't enjoy their success, the artist who can't share their work, the parent who can't celebrate their children's achievements, the student who can't acknowledge their intelligence. We're all walking around pretending to be less than we are, and we're all waiting for permission to stop pretending. Consider this your permission, not from me. I don't have the authority to give you permission. This is your permission from your own unconscious, which brought you to this message, which kept you listening, which is right now recognizing truth even if your conscious mind is arguing. Your unconscious knows you're ready, or you wouldn't be here. The fact that you've stayed with me this long tells me that you're not just curious, you're ready. Ready to stop the charade of unworthiness. Ready to end the performance of struggle. Ready to cease the exhausting pretense of being less than you are. Your unconscious has been preparing you for this moment your entire life. Every struggle has been strengthening you. Every failure has been teaching you. Every loss has been clearing space for your real victory. But readiness doesn't mean you won't feel fear. You will. Readiness doesn't mean you won't have doubt. You will. Readiness doesn't mean the old patterns won't try to reassert themselves. They will. Readiness simply means you're willing to feel the fear and choose victory anyway. You're willing to have the doubt and move forward anyway. You're willing to see the old patterns and choose new ones anyway. This is the paradox of growth. You're already perfect and you're still evolving. You're already whole and you're still healing. You're already victorious and you're still discovering what victory means. These aren't contradictions. They're the dynamic tension that creates life. A tree is perfect at every stage of its growth, and it's still growing. You are perfect at every stage of your evolution, and you're still evolving. The victory I'm talking about isn't a fixed state. It's not a place you arrive and then you're done. It's a dynamic recognition that has to be renewed every day, sometimes every hour, sometimes every moment, It's a practice, not an achievement. It's a remembering, not a becoming. It's a choosing, again and again, to align with what has always been true. Some days you'll forget. You'll wake up and immediately start performing your unworthiness. You'll go through your day collecting evidence of your not enoughness. You'll lie in bed reviewing all the ways you failed. And that's okay. That's human. That's the ego trying to keep you safe in the familiar territory of limitation. Don't judge it. Just notice it. And then remember that you were born victorious. Remember that you beat impossible odds just to exist. Remember that the same force that spins the planets and grows the trees and beats your heart is the force that lives in you, as you. Remember that your very existence is proof of your worthiness. Remember that you don't have to earn your victory, you just have to stop rejecting it. If this resonated with you, make sure to subscribe for more, hit like to support, and drop a comment sharing your own experience. I'd love to hear from you. Remember, your unconscious brought you to this video for a reason. Trust what it's trying to tell you. You wouldn't be here if some part of you wasn't ready to remember its victory. You wouldn't have stayed this long if some part of you wasn't ready to stop pretending to be less than you are. The very fact that you're listening to this, that you've made it to the end, tells me something about you. You're not satisfied with the story you've been told about yourself. You know there's more. You can feel it. That feeling, that's your victory calling you home. Answer the call. The world is waiting for what you become when you remember who you've always been.